In 1943, a man's heart stopped beating. When doctors brought him back, he described a private conversation happening in a room he had never entered, word for word. The doctors confirmed every detail. Science has been trying to explain it ever since. This is the After Dark file. You're listening to the After Dark file, where we open the cases that were never meant to be found. What you're about to hear has been documented, verified, and quietly buried until now. In 1943, a Norwegian man named Einar Kvam was declared clinically dead after a cardiac event in a hospital in Oslo. When he was revived, minutes later by the medical standards of the time, he did something that nobody in that room was prepared for. He described a conversation, a specific one, word for word, between two doctors in a room down the hall that he had never entered, that nobody had told him about. A conversation that had happened while his heart was not beating. The doctors confirmed it, every detail. This is the kind of thing that should have a clean explanation. And for some of these cases, there almost is one. Almost. Kvam's account was documented by his attending physician and later referenced in early European medical literature on resuscitation. He described not just the content of the conversation, but the physical arrangement of the room, where the doctors were standing, which one spoke first. The physiological explanation that gets offered most often is this. The brain doesn't shut off like a light switch. There are cascading electrical events, residual auditory processing, possible sensory leakage. It's plausible. It accounts for a lot. What it doesn't account for is the room he'd never entered. Medical historians have noted Kvam's case as an early documented outlier. Not proof of anything, but a data point that didn't fit cleanly into the framework they had. The doctors involved reportedly requested that the account be written down. They weren't sure what they were writing down. They just knew it felt important. In 2001, Dutch cardiologist Pim van Lommel published a landmark study in the Lancet, one of the most respected medical journals in the world. Over 13 years, he and his team followed 344 patients who had been resuscitated after cardiac arrest. Of those, 62 reported near-death experiences, 18% of the total sample. That number alone was significant. But one case stood above the others. A comatose patient arrived at the hospital, unresponsive, no identification. A nurse removed his dentures during resuscitation and placed them in a specific drawer of a crash cart. The patient was later moved to the ICU. More than a week later, conscious, recovered, he recognized that same nurse and told her exactly where she had put his teeth. He described her, described the room, described details of his own resuscitation from a perspective that would require him to have been watching from above. The nurse herself stated she was flabbergasted. Van Lommel included the account in his published findings without claiming it proved anything metaphysical. He simply said, "It requires explanation, and we don't have one." Sullivan was a truck driver in Connecticut who underwent emergency bypass surgery in 1988. During the procedure, while under full general anesthesia, a state in which conscious experience should be pharmacologically impossible, Sullivan reported floating above the operating table and watching. He described his surgeon's behavior in a very specific way. A behavior that, when investigators spoke to the surgeon afterward, was confirmed as an idiosyncratic habit the man had developed. When his hands were sterile, but he needed to gesture, he would point using his elbows. Sullivan had never met this surgeon before that day. Nobody would have told him. It wasn't a known public detail. It was the kind of small, unconscious tic that a person develops over years and never thinks about. Here's what sits with me about these accounts. They don't come from people trying to sell a story. Most of them were reluctant to speak at all, afraid of sounding unwell, afraid of what it meant, afraid of what it said about the nature of the thing they were before they came back. Science hasn't closed this question. The AWARE study, running since 2008, has attempted to place visual targets in hospital resuscitation rooms, images that could only be seen from above, and track whether NDE patients report them correctly. Results so far are inconclusive. The study is ongoing. The honest answer, the one researchers keep arriving at, is that we don't fully understand what happens to consciousness in the window between clinical death and revival. We have theories, we have models, we have Einar Kvam describing a conversation in a room he never entered, and we have no clean explanation for what he heard, or where he was standing when he heard it. If you want to go deeper, the Van Lommel study is publicly accessible through the Lancet archives. Make up your own mind about what it means. I'll be back with another file. Until then, stay curious about the dark. 3 different patients, 3 different hospitals, 3 different decades. All of them came back with details they should have had no way of knowing. A conversation through a wall, a pair of dentures in a specific drawer, a surgeon's unconscious habit developed over years. None of them were trying to prove anything. Most of them were afraid to speak at all. Whatever happened in that window between death and coming back, science hasn't closed the file. The AWARE study is still running. Researchers are still placing targets on hospital shelves, still waiting for someone to come back and describe what they saw. So far, some of them have. This has been the After Dark file. Every week, we open another case, another file that was never meant to be found. If tonight's story stayed with you, good. It should. We'll see you in the dark. This is the After Dark file. Good night.